Hi, my name is Andy Pilgram, and welcome to my PowerPoint presentation that I make to parent nights. In 1981, I came to the US as a computer programmer. In 1984, I actually started racing cars professionally. And it's those two careers that really have brought me along in the US. Now, in 1994, I started speaking to high school students in Florida about the dangers of distracted driving. That was actually a give-back project. Things were going well with racing and things were going well with my IT company that I started in 1989, and I wanted to try and do something to give back, and it seemed that things related to driving was a good idea. 1998, I became a US citizen, and over the last 3 years I'm still racing currently. I still have my IT company, which is now 25 years old, and I'm still doing a lot with driver education. My work in the field of driver education has sort of expanded over the years. I've been speaking and educating new drivers on the dangers of distracted driving for a while, and I've done a lot of driver education conferences. I've done the national conferences 2011, 12, and 13. I've spoken in states, so about 13 or 14 different states, to driver education teachers. And as far as research goes, I always stay up on top of things by looking at what the NTSB or the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is coming out with to keep myself current. In March 2011, I completed a DVD called The Driving Zone 2. The Driving Zone 2 has been used by driver education teachers in about 43 states, and we gave out about 10,000 copies to those teachers to use. That DVD was really a supplement to those driver education curriculums and has been very, very well received by the teachers. The teachers really get to talk about road signs, and they talk about street rules, and they give a little bit of time in the cars, but there's not a lot of time for driver ed teachers to go over the street survival skills because they don't test for those things on the driving test, unfortunately. So that's where my video was great for the teachers, and that could just be slipped into the classes. We've got a lot of things going on in not a good way on the roads, unfortunately. Fatalities were up about 5% in the last year, even though we shouldn't focus on fatalities. I've always felt that we should focus on America's relative position in things like death per capita or death per miles driven. And even though in the mid-80s we used to be the #1 safest, we're now like number 42 or number 11 in those kind of categories. And falling from #1 to those kind of numbers is pretty much inexcusable. And again, it just shows us that we have a lot of work to do. The injuries requiring hospitalization, medical attentions are up 5%, 3.9 million. These are numbers that are reported. A lot of things out there are unreported. There are actually, NHTSA tells us that there's probably about 6 million collisions and crashes reported on the roads each year, and an estimated up to 11 million more go unreported, which is just a staggering number. Traffic density is never mentioned. There's something that I talk about, traffic density. The traffic density in the US is about 1/10 of the traffic density in, say, some of the European countries, but our death per mile rate and our collision crash rates are the same, which is actually or worse. So what we're doing is we have 10 times less traffic, but we're still getting into the same number of collisions and crashes, and again, that's pretty much inexcusable. I made a DVD to help driver education teachers, and again, that, as I said, that's been very well received. But we have a parent problem. Parents get by with marginal driving skills in most cases. I mean, they're alive, they're not necessarily getting into crashes every day, but they're really not particularly great drivers. We know this to be true. Parents have the years of driving experience they have, and new drivers have limited driving experience and virtually no driving skills. Now, what I found out when looking at research is that at least 75% of new drivers learn distracted driving habits from watching their parents drive as they grew up. So in 2012, I made three PSAs to help or jolt parents into thinking about this problem. The DVDs, these PSAs have been very, very successful at parent nights and have been used for quite a while. So I've been very happy with those. I'm going to play one of those PSAs for you right here.
Sometimes Mom, she tries to lean back with her knee on the wheel while texting like that.
mom talks on the phone like this. Blah, 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 blah. Well, Daddy sometimes holds the phone like this and drives at the same time. Sometimes my mom picks up the phone and texts like this. And also talks, and I don't like when he does that, so I keep on telling him both hands on the wheel.
I've never thought about it before, and I know I need to change it.
I need to change the way I drive.
I just never thought my kid was paying that much attention to my driving.
Now it comes to the parent driving zone. Because we understand that parents' distracted driving behavior is transferring to their children, and because we know that distracted new drivers, and that's anyone who's been driving less than 5 years, get into collisions and crashes at a much higher rate than young drivers or new drivers that have not grown up with parents who drive distracted, we got a big problem. And this is the majority of parents doing this. So I made a video recently called The Parent Driving Zone. Now, I've spoken with thousands of parents over the last 20 years about this subject. And the most common question they've ever asked me is, where can I get help with my child's driving? Which is very important, obviously. So hopefully the Parent Driving Zone is a piece of knowledge and information that can really help them. Now, the most common quote I've seen after they've seen the Parent Driving Zone is, I just never thought about any of this. Well, there's no reason why parents would think about this. When you think about it, they're not driver education teachers. So it does make sense. So we're giving parents something to think about, something for them to understand that driving is different. Driving is the only thing your kid is going to do on a daily basis that has this ability to kill them, friends, family, and even people they don't know. Driving is a serious business when it all goes wrong. And parents need to understand this. So knowing that they're transferring this information, this distracted driving behavior to their children as they grow up, now knowing that, a lot of parents are making changes. I have a good data on that, and I'm very encouraged to see what I've seen so far. The grim realization is, when I talk about the grim realization, when a parent comes to a parent night prior to a child getting a permit, and that child is already 15 and they see or hear what I have to say about this, they go, what do I do now? My kid's been watching me probably since the age of 4 years old through 15, and I know I've driven distracted that whole time. I just never realized this is going to potentially be a big problem. What do I do now? There is information in the Parent Driving Zone that addresses this. We advise these parents to sit down, tell them that you haven't thought about this before, and now you have thought about it, now you have some new information, and make changes right then. Make changes and tell your child you're going to make the changes, and they absolutely need to watch the video with you, and hopefully they also follow those same guidelines. The other thing that parents talk about when they see this is, I may have obviously not done a great job with my 15-year-old, but guess what? I've got a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, and now I realize I can do a better job with them, and that's a big part of this, is understanding that. We know that knowledge and information can change behavior. I've seen it, driver education teachers have seen it, and there's no doubt about it. There's an understanding here that parents have made change before. 1995 NHTSA recommendation basically told parents that if they had an airbag in the front of the vehicle with their car and they had a child in the front seat in a child safety seat, there was a problem in a collision or crash, that airbag could severely, if it went off, could severely injure that infant. That recommendation came out in 1995. When parents understood that, they heard about it, they made changes. What I heard from NHTSA was, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, they told me that they had never seen such a change in parent behavior ever from just a recommendation. Remember, no laws, no penalties, no nothing at that point. It was just a recommendation. Media heard about it, parents heard about it, and it was talked about. And in 3 to 4 months, from 20% of child safety seats being in the rear of vehicles, 80% of child seats ended up in the rear seats after about 3 or 4 months. That is a massive change from 20% to 80%. And so understanding that the child may be injured by an airbag, it's a possibility my child's in danger, I'm moving it. That's the kind of thing we hope that the Parent Driving Zone is going to do for parents now. Once they understand that distracted driving behavior of any kind, we don't just mean texting. Texting is a problem. It's part of a problem with smartphones, emails, updating message boards, looking at streaming videos. There's so many things you can do on a smartphone. It's not just texting. Obviously, none of it's any good. And never ever think that a voice activated or hands-free or Bluetooth is any safer. It is not. There is plenty of research out there now that parents need to understand. Hands-free is no safer than a handheld phone as far as the mental distraction. And it's always been the mental distraction of a phone call that stops us paying full attention to driving. It's not the fact that we're just holding a phone in one hand. It is the mental distraction of the phone call. So please, never be under that misunderstanding. We already showed you a PSA, and at the end of that PSA you saw that it basically don't teach your children skills that kill. That's been, again, very well received by parents at parent nights. And again, children learn from parental behavior. These are basic points that we go over a lot in these parent nights. We've also gone over the understanding that driving is different, and this is something I drive home in the Parent Driving Zone. Again, driving's different. Why is it different? Because it's the only thing most of us will ever do on a daily basis that has this potential of this massive downside. You could kill yourself, your friends, your family, and even people you don't know. It's just something that parents need to understand. Driving is different. So we need to protect children as best we can. Everybody does. All adults, not just parents, but all adult drivers driving with a child in the vehicle at any time. You've got to understand that kids pick up what you do. It's natural. How long are your children actually in the vehicle with you? Big point. Kids are only in the vehicle with parents about 10 to 25% of the time in total. So we know that parents can make these changes. There is no real reason, and I hear so many, oh, it's my job, I've got to do this. You don't have to keep driving. If you've got a phone call that's that important, then stop the car somewhere safe and then make the phone call. There is never a good reason. And adults are dying with children in vehicles all the time. Just go on YouTube. You can see so many pictures of people and so many videos of people making massive mistakes with children in a vehicle. There's no way that this can happen. And if adults are doing that, then obviously when the kid gets a chance to drive, they're going to do that. You just cannot drive distracted with... I wish, and I'm not naive, but I understand most adults are not going to stop driving distracted. It's become such an epidemic. But I'm pleading with parents and all adults, don't do it when there are kids in the vehicle. We can do that much. We can, and we should. We've already been over distracted driving, takes your attention from driving. We understand that. And of course, we've already mentioned that it's not only texting. There's so many forms of distraction. If you're drunk, it's a driving distraction. If you're tired and fatigued, it's a driving distraction. On the phone calls, obviously a driving distraction. Eating, turning around, yelling at other traffic. Emotion is a driving distraction. Of course it is. A highly emotional phone call is a massive problem because you've got emotion and you've got the phone call. So again, we have tremendous data on this. Great many instruction points in the PDZ. There are a lot of good instruction points in PDZ for parents. There's a ton of stuff. It talks about anticipation, commentary driving, analysis of a collision, responsibility and ownership, inattention blindness. There's a tremendous amount. Parts 1 and 2 last 55 minutes. I mean, that's less than a reality TV show. I think parents can spend this time, and there's a break in the middle. So it's 55 minutes to get the attention of parents, and then part 3 has sections 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's for parents with children of all ages. Yes, all ages. Part 3, section 1 is for parents from newborns to out of booster seat. Section 2 is for parents of middle school age children. Section 3 is the biggest part of this part 3, which is about 36, 35, 38 minutes long, and that's for parents whose child is in a permit year, and that's got fantastic information for parents. You basically run this stuff, and if your child then does driver education, structured, that they're going to be a much better student. And in so many places in America now, kids are not getting any driver education at all. And so this section becomes even more important. And then section 4 is for parents who are still worried that their kid is not a great driver or not paying attention. And this gives some ideas how to deal with GDL laws, which are now very important, and also to help the child, even though they have a full license. 50 hours, 30 hours of GDL driving is basically all you get, and 6 hours of driver ed potentially. It's just not enough. If you have the chance to drive with your child 100, 150 hours in that permit year, then I advise you to do it, because at least 100 hours is the way to go. And please pay attention. We have so many, I've talked to so many students whose parents sleep in the car, text in the car, do work in the car. They're not paying attention to the way that the child is driving, and the whole point of GDL is for the parents to be involved in the driving. So make sure you pay attention and stay engaged. Very, very important. In the parent driving zone, I'm explaining to parents that their distracted driving behavior will definitely impact their children. There's no doubt about it. The research proves it. But if a parent is trying to make these changes, these things may be such a habit, it may be so difficult for them to do that they really have a hard time. So the thought occurred to me that if I go into middle schools and talk to middle school children, they could possibly be a catalyst here. They could possibly help the parents understand. So what I've been doing recently is I've been going into middle schools and talking to those children about distracted driving recognition. Well, obviously most of them, the first place they're going to recognize it is in their own parents. So going into these schools, I explain to them that they can say something if they're driving with a parent or adult who's driving distracted. I explain to them not to get into arguments, that's also a distraction. And I tell them that if they're too nervous to say something on the trip, wait till you stop. Or if you don't really want to say anything to that adult at all, then say something to another adult. If it's your dad, say something to your mom. If it's your mom, say something to your dad. If it's both your parents, then tell another trusted adult or a teacher or even an aunt or uncle, somebody else, but don't stay silent. It's too important. The driver has your life in their hands. It's that important to say something. When we've talked about that kind of thing, we also talk about wearing seatbelts. We understand, they've told me that, I asked for a show of hands on this, they've told me that they are told to wear seatbelts by adults. But about 30% of the time, those adults that tell them don't wear their seatbelt. Again, we know that 30% of adults right now don't wear seatbelts, and it turns out that 30% of new drivers also don't wear seatbelts. Again, this is transferred behavior, transferred understanding. They educate the children not to wear the seatbelt. It's too important. And everybody in a vehicle has to wear a seatbelt. So important. Then we've done the inside of the vehicle, giving them a little bit of power, a little bit of potential control there. They can say something. Outside of the vehicle, we talk about blind spot recognition, low eyes, situation awareness, all kinds of things like that. Eye scanning. These things they can use while riding a bicycle, while they're on the street, even walking. They have to understand this stuff. So we talk about these are very important skills that they can use. And guess what? If they understand this, and it's fairly simple, we show them examples and they get it, so that when they use these skills, these same skills used while riding their bicycle will then apply when it's time for their turn to drive. These are great survival skills for walking down through a parking lot. We're getting people knocked over by distracted drivers in parking lots every day in this country, knocked off bicycles and killed. This is not a subject that we can just ignore. Pedestrian and cyclist deaths are going up faster than any other sector right now, and it's because distracted drivers are more comfortable to drive distracted in low, slow traffic areas, high density or just malls, parking lots. It's got to stop. We've got to help these kids. My goal is to change parent and all adult distracted driving behavior, but especially when children are in the vehicle. I'm not naive enough to think that all parents are going to stop driving distracted, but they have to understand they cannot do it with children in the vehicle. It's just too dangerous. We now understand that most parents never ever think about this link, and I understand that. Most parents are not driver education teachers, but they have to think about this. This is why we have to get the video out there. This is why we have to get this understanding to parents. And, obviously the effects on children are staggering. The collision and crash and fatality and serious injury rates for 16 through 20-year-olds is directly related to the fact that we have a weak driving test. We have driver education teachers that get the children for a very short amount of time, have very little time to help teach this stuff. They do the very, very best they can. The test is way too easy. and we have automatic transmissions, which is again another problem that allows people to be more distracted more easily. So we got too many areas. Nothing's going to change in those areas at this point as far as I can see, so we have to change the parent behavior and then also educate these middle school children to help the parents and bring it home and tell them, hey, I don't like it when you drive distracted. These kids are unfortunately getting to the point where they're driving, where they're with adults and parents and they're nervous, they're frightened, and this is what I'm hearing. That's a very, very uncomfortable way for anybody to travel. We can change this. We definitely can change this. I know parents can change this. Parents basically want to help their children. Parents do want to protect their children. And this is an exact example of that. So thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. The information on the next slide will give you a little bit. If you want to contact me, you're all welcome. You can email me. I always answer my own emails. And I'm sure the driver ed teacher in the class can give you more information also. And good luck and stay safe, everybody.